documenting the front lines of the AI revolution, the AI Rebels podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the AI Rebels podcast. We're very excited to have Cody Crumrine here, the CEO of Nobi. Thanks for coming on, Cody.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
We're very excited. I think everything you're doing is pretty unique. I don't know if we've had anyone on. We're going to dig into it, but
no, we haven't
we're
yet.
excited. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about Nobi? Can you give us your classic elevator pitch, right? Like you run into someone, they're like, Cody, Nobi, cool. What do you do? Like, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so Nobi helps communities leverage AI to stay awesome at big scale, right? So there's a lot of things in a community that a community manager or an owner does to keep things working smoothly, keep experiences good, that just get impossible to keep up with as the community grows, right? So you've got this incredibly valuable community now because you're really big, but people start missing out on more value because it kind of gets buried in the noise. Nobi uses some AI and good old-fashioned data automation to take a chunk of those things off of a community manager's plate, do them on an automated business, let them focus on the human element.
It's awesome. So what was kind of the inspiration for pursuing this as opposed to whatever other ideas you might have had?
Yeah, it was a complete accident, actually. I
love those.
All great things, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't set out to build tools for communities at all. I had been doing freelance consulting and development kind of in the generative AI integration space. I wanted a platform to make building AI automations easier. That's what I wanted for me. Assumed a bunch of other people wanted it too. So I built that out really kind of as an agnostic way to do that. First customer happened to be a large professional community. And I thought, oh, that's cool, but I still thought of myself as just a generic AI automation tool and did end up working then with like a recruiting firm on some non-community related stuff. But then got inbound from another professional community and thought, oh, cool, another community. Still didn't see that was the way I was being pulled. And then started talking with another community tool that was like, hey, a lot of people we think need this. Can we talk about partnerships or things we could build together? And that's when I finally started to pay attention a little bit to, I got to figure out why I'm getting traction in this community space and not really other places. And it turns out it's a good fit for AI, right? Because especially like LLMs and recent generative AI stuff, because communities are full of rich information, but it's all unstructured. It's all conversational. It's all hard to work with at scale. And for the most part, community teams are small. Smaller teams, smaller budgets. They can't just throw more people at trying to get value out of that or trying to handle those interactions. So after kind of realizing that, really kind of leaned into the community space, focused just on the tools that are valuable there. And have fallen in love with it since, because now I'm building tools that aren't just helping, most of my career, the software that I've built has helped, marketers make more money or, big businesses like manage things better. And that's all good. That's all great stuff. But, there's a certain feel good element to working with, connecting people to each other for better experiences, right? So I've really enjoyed leading in that different direction.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I think you're hitting a good niche at the right time. I've been doing some experiments of my own with AI agents recently, and by far the most common request I get from people who are interested in the project. Right now, he just, he interacts with you in Discord. He can build you websites, things like that. But by far the most common request I get from people is like, hey, could he manage my Discord, or could he manage my, my Instagram? Like, it's fascinating how much appetite there is for AI community managers already. I thought it was going to take just a little bit longer, but I guess not. So with Nobi, do you focus on a particular channel or platform, I should say, or is it more platform agnostic?
Yeah, so built to be platform agnostic, because again, this started as just a generic automation platform. So one of the first things I did was, we need modular connectors. It has to be easy to build out, new things. But as far as where we're focusing energy right now, very Slack especially is where we see the most traction, and Discord second after that.
Gotcha.
And then a little bit of working with, might bring on someone that's using a discourse and can So open to kind of building integrations to anything that has an API if there's suitable interest. But we find Slack and Discord are really big, at least kind of in the circles that I've been landing in.
Yeah, interesting. So when someone comes to you, like at what point does someone bring on Nobi?
Yeah. So right now, I'd say there's kind of two kind of triggers. So one is because there's still just a lot of buzz and excitement in the generative AI space. One is just we want to add something cool and interesting to the community, right? So one of our first product out was a knowledge bot where you can DM or app message the bot in the channel, ask it a question. It's going to search through all of the conversation history, maybe articles that have been posted, because there's usually a newsletter associated with community. Give you back, use an LLM, right, to give you back an answer, and then link you to, okay, go jump into this thread, and join the conversation. So we've had some inbound that's just because, hey, I saw that cool knowledge bot thing, I want to do it for my community. I honestly think that's not always solving a clear problem. It just is shiny and cool, which is just great. We love shiny and cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say it does solve a real problem. Sorry, I just have to get that off real quick because you're talking about it. I'm like, man, I have wasted so many work hours just scrolling through Slack trying to find something that I'm searching for. Anyway, sorry, continue. I just had to get on my soapbox for a moment.
We can talk more about that. I think that does solve a real problem. I think it's not always the real problem that started the conversation, right?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I think then the other real problem outside of knowledge search, which we can talk more about, the other real problem is there's a point where a community gets difficult to keep up with, and that point's not a consistent number. It might be 200 members, it might be 2,000 members, it might be 20,000 members. Talk to so many community managers that say, basically, I've hit this point where this used to be really, really great, but now I can't keep up with it. Like, people tell me that their favorite part of the community is how I always know who to invite into a conversation or how to help them find a resource. And well, that's great for them, but I would like to go on vacation sometime, right?
Right.
So there's a point where the personality or the founder or whoever can't be the glue anymore. I think that's especially prevalent with communities where the community itself is the product, like a community of practice, coaching, or a mastermind kind of thing. Maybe a little less felt when it's like a user group or DevRel or something like that, where there's less of a one person that kind of started up.
So how does it, so someone comes to you, they say, all right, tap out. I can't manage this all anymore. You integrate Nobi into their community. Let's say it's Slack. What exactly is Nobi going to do for that person?
Yeah. So we have three things it does out of the box, 3 different bots. So the first one is an intro bot, and you're going to point it to whatever channel people do their introductions in, and it's going to watch those. And whenever there's a suitable post, right, if you just say, hey, I'm Cody, nice to meet you, it'll ignore that, not much to do with it. But if you give a nice little background, here's where I'm from, what I'm here for, etc., it's going to read that, look at the channels available in that Slack workspace, and give you a couple recommendations of where to start. Like, hey, because you have a background in this, we actually have a topic channel about that if you want to join in. Or, because you're from Oregon, we've got a Connect Portland channel. Helps people jump in. We've got a couple communities that have like 150 different channels, right? So that helping know where to start can be a nice touch. And interesting, I'll put a pin to come back and talk about this later, but the first version of that, people actually hated, and I think it speaks to where AI does and doesn't belong in community. So we'll come back and touch on that in a minute.
Yeah, definitely.
But so then the second one is that knowledge bot. That's the proactive information seeking, right? I know there's information out here about this. People ask the same question like every couple months because they don't know to answer it, and Slack search is terrible, whatever, right? So that's available both through Slack, or you can embed it on the website too, and ask a question, get answers from facts from past threads and whatnot. And then we have a proactive version of that question answering as well. So we had a community, we found that they had a couple channels that were specifically around question asking or requests of some kind. So one was like for founders, and this is the spot to ask questions of other founders, like how did you navigate this? How did you build this? Right. And then the other was a network request. So a channel just for like, hey, I need to talk to people in this role, or I'm applying for a job at this company. Does anybody have a connection there? Know somebody I can talk to? And we looked at those, and so we looked at the chance of getting an answer or a fulfillment to your request there, and it was pretty high. You had, I don't remember, somewhere in the 70% chance of someone chiming in and being able to help you out. If you didn't get that answer within like one calendar day of posting your question, it's lost in the noise. Your chance of ever getting even a response dropped to below like 13% or something, right? Mm-hmm. So we were like, what can we do about those messages that get missed? Because people are clearly willing to help out. They just can't keep up with everything. So the bot will watch for those unanswered questions. It will use an LLM to determine, like, is this actually answered versus somebody replying and just saying, oh, I have that need as well, right? And then it'll allow 48 hours because we want to give humans a chance to interact first. That's the priority, is people-to-people interaction. And then if it's still got no help, the bot will actually go search through the history for people who have talked about similar things, who look like they may be able to help fulfill that request. And if it finds a good enough match, it will invite them into the thread. So it'll tag them and say, hey, @Spencer has talked about this problem before. Maybe he can help you out. And so it kind of gives them a place to go look, doesn't fully answer the question, but encourages the person to come and jump in. And that's been really cool because we saw that increase the chance of actually getting an answer. And we saw that revive kind of, dead threads that would have disappeared too, even when the bot had kind of a miss and someone was like, oh yeah, I used to do that, but I don't anymore. It got conversation going again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I totally thought you were going to say the bot then comes and says, here's the answer, sort of thing. But I like that it just prompts the community. I mean, that's the whole purpose, right? That's the idea. So that's
prompting the prompters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we try to keep in mind, when we're building stuff out, like, is this going to take the place of human interaction, or is this going to encourage human interaction, right? Because, just morally and practically in a world with a loneliness epidemic, you don't want to be building things that replace human interaction. And in a community space, especially, like, that's your business model, is people to people. You don't want to build something that like totally disrupts and gets in between the people, or you don't have a business anymore, right? Or you're trying to fundamentally change what it is.
Yeah, did you see the Meta auto-generated like Instagram and Facebook profiles that they did and immediately deleted like a couple weeks ago? I
missed that. That sounds amazing.
It was pretty bad. It was they were embarrassing. It was, very exploitative of, well, every identity that they tried to represent with their little bots. But it was like an interesting experiment to me. I thought it was terrible, but it was an interesting experiment because I do believe that at some point people are going to be making, replicas of themselves that way and not think much of it. And so I like approaches like Nobi, where it's more like, hey, the LLM is the social glue. The natural social glue between humans wears thin, or, isn't in the proper place or whatever, right? I really like that approach. It's a very interesting idea. Slight step back from Nobi. I don't know if we got this answer from you. What got you specifically into AI? Like, what was kind of the aha moment for you?
Yeah, so my background has been mostly data engineering. That's what I built for most of my career, was SaaS for businesses, doing ETL, data prep, data integration, right? Moving all the bits and bytes around. And so when DaVinci 3 came out, and there was a whole bunch of buzz around that because capabilities, right? There's a big jump in what LLMs can do. It was really the excitement of, okay, I do not have a machine learning background, right? I worked at a statistics software company for a while, so I did a little bit of random forest, linear regression stuff, but I'm not an AI guy. And all of a sudden, this model drops that, one, like, I can conceptually get my head around pretty easily, right? Like, most people have a basic understanding of how an LLM works. And it's wrong in a lot of ways, but it's enough that like you can think about it and it makes sense.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, well, I'm not an AI guy, but I am an integration guy. I am here's this API. I can integrate it with your application or your workflow. That means I can work with this large language model stuff. So that was hugely exciting because it opened that up to a whole different set of expertise. And then also just being in that automation space, it meant saying yes to so many things that I've been saying no to for a decade, right? Like one of the first projects I did for a real customer with generative AI was looking at receipt data and reviews for the restaurant where you like order that food, right? And saying like, look, we can now take this unstructured receipt data and this unstructured review where someone, talks about their experience and create structured data that says, hey, soggy was negative. It was about the fries. Delicious was positive. It was about the burger, right? We can associate that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
like that sort of thing is the sort of thing that customers have thought we ought to be able to do for years. They're like, this seems really simple. Can't we just automate this? Like, no, it does seem really simple, but you still kind of need, it's too fuzzy to program. And now it's not. Now you can say, yeah, okay, we can do that. So
It's like
that's really
that
what got me
famous
excited.
it's that famous XKCD comic where like the first one is like, hey, we need to be able to tell if like these photos are taken inside of a national park, and the guy's like, oh, easy, GIS lookup, I'll be done in a couple hours. And he's like, and then we need to be able to tell if the picture is of a bird. And he's like, I'll need 12 years and a research team. It's so funny just how different the perception is of what computer intelligence is to what it actually does. I had a really good question that I'm blanking on now. Jake,
Yeah.
throwing it over to you.
No, you're good. I'm curious. You mentioned you wanted to kind of circle back to something that they hated when you implemented it first. I'm curious what that story was.
Yeah, so the first version of the intro bot, and right, we're using an LLM behind the scenes. So we're passing it your intro, we're passing it the channel descriptions, we're prompting it to give us back, a list of where you should get started. And because they mimic, human writing, human language, it would by default give us back this nice warm welcome too. So it wouldn't say, hey, Jacob, here are 3 channels based on your background. It would say, Jacob, thank you for joining the community. We're so happy to have you. I love that you said you played baseball. Baseball's so cool. It did this little warm welcome. And so we kind of piloted it with that, and feedback was super negative because that feels so fake, right? This is obviously a bot. I just joined a community, right? Like I didn't go get on ChatGPT to try out the new voice where I'm excited to see how human it can be. I joined a community to talk to people, and my first interaction is clearly a bot pretending to be people.
Who's never played baseball.
Yeah, right. And that's just the worst vibe, right? People don't like that. It feels disingenuous. And so when we picked up on that, we modified that to cut the warm fuzzy and just be a dumb tool giving you recommendations, right? So all it says is, hi, Jacob, based on your background, here's some channels. And then people liked it, right? And so I feel like that speaks to there are areas of interaction where we will appreciate AI and automation and what it does for us. And there are areas of interaction where it doesn't belong, and it will actually make the interaction feel cheapened and worse. And so we've got to pay attention to which area we're playing in.
I mean, I think that this is a really interesting idea because I think Spencer and I have talked about similar ideas quite a bit where it's easy. There's kind of 2 parties, right? There's like those developers on X that are like AI everywhere. Like, let's get AI in everything and it's going to take over and it's going to do everything. And then there's obviously many levels. But if you think about humans, like we've never wanted that. We've always relished that like human interaction. So Nobi's mission here is really powerful. And I think a lot of AI tools can learn from it, just that it's not about automating everything. It's not about, using AI in every little facet and like, okay, let's just take this process and blow it up. It's like, no, okay, let's take a step back. Like, what do we actually need and want? Because there's so much, like a community especially, there's so much value there of just person-to-person interaction and feeling that belonging. This example, like no one felt like they belonged when the bot was like, come on in, like you're in. But it was
That's a
when
little
they got
serial
plugged
killer.
in. Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot to learn from this example that, yes, AI can do so much, and it could have done more, right? I'm sure you could have like done so much more, but it's like people just wanted that like initial like, here, go here are your groups, here are your friends, go this way.
Yeah.
And I think that another interesting thing is, well, another side to this is that we're going to see a lot of variety too in moving forward in how people want to interact with LLMs within their community. Like I suspect that most people are going to want exactly what Novi is doing, where it's like, hey, like, it's a social glue bot that, helps people interact, but then also like there are going to be some people who want to interact with an LLM as if it's just another dude in their group chat, and it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of art, philosophy, programming, whatever, just what kind of culture develops downstream of this. Going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah.
So how big is the team at Nobi? How long have you guys been going for now?
We've been going, I guess about a year and a half. I think we officially founded in October of 23. We were doing some work before that, but didn't exist as a company yet. And I'm the only full-time employee.
Oh, wow.
I've got two kind of founding advisors from my first customers that help me set everything up. One contractor, developer / deployment consultant right now. And
Okay.
we've brought on other contractors for periods of high work occasionally. Yeah, fairly small so far still.
Wow. I mean, it also, again, this is just another illustration. Like we keep seeing how much is possible now with, if you are using AI, like you can really do a lot as a one man or small team. That's amazing. Well done. I mean, it's a ton of work.
It is a ton of work. And I feel like, right, I heard someone say, you're qualified for a job about a year after you take it. You're qualified to be a founder about 2 years after you start. So that would mean I'm a little over halfway through qualified.
Hey.
And I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, you're almost there.
Yeah.
Okay, very quick side note. What is this little balcony thing above your head here behind you? Because it looks cool, and I've been admiring it.
It is cool. Yeah, that's like our library space. So you can't see
awesome.
very well, but there's bookshelves up there. Yeah, above my office.
Okay, awesome. I couldn't ignore that curiosity any longer and had to ask.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. I'll give all credit for my wife to that. She designed it. It was her idea.
That's
when
awesome.
we first built the house, it was just a scary hole in the floor. There were no railings or even ladder up to it or anything. So she added all the railings and all the plants and everything.
Really cool.
That's awesome. So with Nobi, what's the where are you taking it next? Is there a specific use case that you're pursuing next, or are you just going to continue iterating on and deepening the current use cases?
Yeah, so we still do a lot of custom stuff on top of those kind of 3 tools. So things like custom digest. We have a customer, we help draft their newsletter using AI because they put out a top threads from the community every week. So it helps them search and find like, here were threads that met your criteria for good. And we like to look at those like, here's a need someone has. Okay, let's build it out for them, and then let's see if there's appetite for this wider. Right. And so I think one of what we are putting out next is personal digests within communities for a couple reasons. We've had a couple community owners tell me that the most common reason they hear when someone is leaving, cancels their subscription and, does an exit survey or whatever is, this is great, but I don't have the time to take advantage of it, or I can't keep up with it. I'm going to cancel for now. I'm going to come back when I have more time. And you never have more time. So you never come back, right? And so from the community owner side, I've heard a lot of interest in like, can we somehow help people just see the stuff that they care about? So we're actually beta testing with a couple users right now, a way to kind of do, well, here's why I joined, here's my background, here's my interests. Give me just like a weekly, hey, make sure you don't miss these 7 threads or whatever over here.
Nice.
So we're doing some fun stuff with that I hope turns into a widely available tool sooner than later. And then the flip side, the other reason I'm excited about that is because I've also talked to just a lot of individuals who are members of multiple communities who say, I do a lot of finding my ICP in communities, right? I join these different niche communities, and my eventual goal is lead gen, right? I want to sell to someone who happens to be a member of these, but I can't just join and go pitch people because then they hate me. Nobody likes that.
Okay.
You have to actually go join and participate and bring value and be a good member of the community, and build relationships that demonstrate your credibility, and all that like person-to-person marketing stuff. And they say the same thing, like, but it's so hard to keep up with, right? I'm in X different communities, and I know I am missing great ways that I could chime in and help the same kind of people that I need to trust me, right, for my marketing sake, but I can't keep up with it. So it's cool to hear that like this is a problem on both sides. Members have this I can't keep up problem.
Mm-hmm.
Owners have this, we need it to be easier to keep track of the important things to you problem. So I'm excited to be building in that direction.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think that I feel like in the past, the information management, I guess, kind of took sort of like the Reddit format, right? Of like, hey, here's Reddit, and then here's all the subreddits. Go find the communities you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're describing is super interesting to me because it's kind of an inversion of that. Of like, hey, you're in this community. Yeah, there's a lot of different channels, and these channels have different categories, but it's not really like the same subreddit model, right? It's not nearly as strictly bifurcated and gated, right? And so it's interesting to see tools that kind of invert that and focus on rather putting the onus of on the human to go find the right places to subscribe and whatnot, like bring it to them. That's really interesting. Totally sorry, I had a specific way I was going to ask that question and my brain went off the rails. I guess I didn't sleep as well last night as I thought. Have you guys gotten any statistics as regarding like server churn, etc.? I'd be curious to see if you guys have numbers yet on being able to quantify the impact.
Yeah, we have not done a good job of keeping track of that, so I don't.
It'd be a hard thing to do, I'm sure.
I know, that's tricky.
I'm actually. It's interesting. I'm having conversations with a customer right now with a new project we're doing around how are we going to determine whether this is successful in the long run, and what do we need to start measuring now so we can measure the difference later. So we're doing a good job of looking at that, I think, for maybe the first time. So maybe down the road I'll have better numbers. But that's kicked off a really interesting conversation we're having about like what is core action for communities, right? And it's going to vary from community to community, but is it engagement, right? Is it asking questions? Is it answering questions? Is it taking part in other, kind of outside the channel things like events, webinars, whatnot? What is really the thing that makes someone sticky and leads to, long-term retention? So we're really kind of exploring that right now. I know one thing that we found is, and it's kind of a thing, but one of the biggest predictors of how long you will stick around is how long you've already stuck around, right? Which is kind of obvious, but we found that if you can get people kind of over the 1 year mark, especially, they're really likely to be multi-year members. And so we think about like, what do you do, especially kind of in those first few months, to make sure people feel engaged, welcome, involved, and like they're getting what they came for. But I think there's a lot more to the story than that. We're looking into figuring it out.
Yeah. Well, okay. Not totally related, but I'm just curious, as you've been building this, is there a specific LLM model that you use, like for coding, for example, that you prefer, that you've found is best?
Yeah, I use mostly OpenAI's models and mostly through Azure. Got into Azure, one, because they have a founders program that gives you free credits like all the cloud providers do right now. But also had a couple customers that were just more comfortable with their data going to Microsoft and OpenAI, even though OpenAI's, they've got agreements and stuff they signed and stuff, but there's just a massive trust issue there apparently, which is really interesting. But yeah, have also used Anthropic's models, have also used Mistral, have kind of played with Llama myself for personal fun things. But the OpenAI models are generally, really easy to work with and have been first in capability. And I think maybe that lead is shrinking, but has made it really easy to go there first and not go anywhere else unless something doesn't work. And I will say in several projects, even those that I've still done freelance kind of outside of Nobi, the pattern is often, well, let's start with like GPT-4o or whatever the like best in class current easy to use model is. Let's start with that first. Prove that everything we want to build will work. Okay, and now let's experiment. Can we do it with with a mini instead, or can we do it with Mistral instead? Let's first prove that we can do it the easiest way, and then see if there's actually a better model for the job.
And so Nobi itself, is that a single model that you guys are using? Is it kind of a mixture of models that making different calls to different models to make different decisions? And is that all on OpenAI models hosted on Azure?
It's a mixture of different models. Everything we're doing for our customers are different OpenAI models on Azure. We do have the ability to kind of bring your own model and drop in and be like, actually, I want to connect to Claude or connect to this over here. So the platform supports that. But I don't think we have anything running live that's not an OpenAI model through Azure.
Jake's having a coughing attack.
I know.
So he'll be back in a
second.
So you personally, do you have like a server yourself of any kind that you use Nobi to manage your own community?
I don't yet, and I keep thinking about, should I start my own community if I've been working in this community space now, I eat my own dog food a little bit, but I don't know. I go back and forth between thinking that's something I should absolutely do and thinking, no, you're crazy. You're already trying to build a company. You want to try to start a community too. That's a terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a lot of test subjects too anyways.
Yeah. So that works well.
We're willing to try out the dog food.
Right.
Jake, glad that you're back with us. Glad you survived.
Yeah, I survived. Getting over a cold. We're getting there.
It's that time of year.
Yeah, 'tis the season. So, unless Spencer, I was hearing, but I wasn't totally aware. Unless you have another question, I had something I was curious about.
No, go for it.
Okay. So, transitioning a little bit to just kind of general AI, I had a question from your perspective as you've been involved kind of from the beginning on a lot of this, the new generation of AI, all these LLMs and everything. What's been the biggest for you? What has been most surprising about what the AI can do?
Most surprising. That's really interesting. I'll have to think on that a bit. The first thing that comes to my mind, I'm not sure if it's actually the most surprising if I go, think hard. But the first thing that pops into my mind was Google's Notebook LM. When that came out, the whole surprise and delight of just throwing notes in that and say, hey, build me a podcast around it was phenomenal. And actually a little worrying. It only took a little bit of playing with that to feel about these fake people the way I feel about the hosts on real podcasts, that I'm like, oh yeah, that's so her.
Classic Claude.
Yeah.
That is so GP.
Yeah, so that was weird and fascinating and
totally
really fun to try to hack and play with too. It did a lot of just let's throw in a note that just tries to get it to reveal its instructions, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was really, really fascinating.
I mean, it kind of is. Yeah. I was just gonna say it kind of is a little scary.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're an AI podcast, and we talk so much about how great it is and everything it can do and how it's revolutionizing everything that it touches. But it's a little freaky. It's a new world. if someone came in and listened to that podcast, a lot of people would just think it's humans talking about, whatever it is. And that's just a little sample of what I think is to come. It's like Spencer is building this agent that fully interacts on Twitter, on X, right?
Mhm.
And people think it's real. People will reply, people will do all this stuff. Like Spencer has the funniest stories of people like fully thinking they're interacting with a human, and it's this AI bot,
Yeah.
It offered to help somebody find a place in San Francisco. And then that person DM'd the bot. And so I had to get on the bot's account and DM the back like, hey, this is actually an AI bot. They don't know anybody in San Francisco.
I can't get you. That's amazing. Well, I mean, on those same lines, I got to reveal something just because it's so interesting. As we first sat down, you were like, I can't remember who introduced us, but I'm glad they connected us. But it was an AI that booked
Was
me
it really?
on this podcast. Yeah.
Was it really?
No way.
Back at that AI email. That's awesome.
Yeah, so there's a company called Podpitch, and this is what they do. They have an agent that both like you basically give it your bio, it finds podcasts that it thinks you're a good fit for, and then it pitches them, reaches out to so many a day.
Try to get you on the show. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, and it works. I'm here, and this is again where it's like a little bit like super cool, but a little bit worrisome too. That like the emails that it writes are not great. They're pretty generic, pretty cheap, right? And you can also use their tool to just like find, hey, here's all the shows we think you might be a good fit for. Email them yourself. And so I did that too. I was like, I'm going to be more personal. I'm going to run like a human. This is going to be better. And, Cody's heartfelt personal messages have booked 0 shows. And the AI kind of cheap, fakey garbage has booked 5 or 6 now.
Heck.
So what does that mean? What does that mean for like content and communication?
That's fascinating. That is
record,
so interesting.
We would have valued your heartfelt message.
Either way, we were scheduling you either way. But
that's right.
That's really interesting. I never would have guessed that. 'Cause I got the messages like, oh, I assumed that this is just like, a form message that whatever his scheduling team is, sends out, right? But even like the reply, like CCing Cody, like, like a work of art, but like
nothing
it's pretty
complex.
natural language. But I never would have picked up on that.
Yeah. So that's really cool. And so that's like to take it in a different direction. I remember hearing a guy at a conference years ago, not even talking about AI, just talking about technology, but this point has stuck with me, right? He was talking about how all technology, right, extends human ability, right? A human can dig, but with a shovel, they can dig better. All technology you could use in right or wrong ways. You can use a shovel to dig a foundation for a house. You can use it to murder someone and bury the body. Right? Those are good, those are bad. And we usually, like most of us, that comes up a lot about technology. You can use it good, you can use it evil. But what's interesting is that no matter how you use that shovel, whether you use it for building or murdering, it's going to have passive side effects that are also positive and negative. So either way, you're going to get blisters on your hands from using that shovel a lot. That's a negative passive consequence that happens whether you're trying to do right or wrong with it. You're also going to get stronger arms. You're going to develop muscles. You're going to have a positive passive side effect, whether you're using it for right or wrong. And so I think about that a lot as we look at AI. Like there's a discussion about like, well, should I use an AI to pitch me on podcasts? Should I use an AI for introductions in community? Like, is that actively positive or negative? And we should think about that. But then also, like, we should be paying attention to these passive side effects. What is it? What might it do to me or to us or to our communication if, the easiest way to get on a podcast is to have an AI send, 35
Interesting.
emails a day?
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that because we talk a lot on this podcast about that exact issue of like, AI is a tool that can be used in both ways. It's a very powerful tool, and that's why people are scared of it. But nobody's really made the point about kind of like the differentiating between the passive and active
Yeah.
downstream effects. It's interesting to think about. Because on one hand, it's like, yeah, it's a fascinating question because, on one hand, we could sit here and say, oh, like the fact that it had to be an AI to email us and like get you on the show, like that's a sign that, of future decline of communication. But on the other hand, like we wouldn't be having this connection potentially without the AI, right? Like, like maybe you send it and I read it and I think, this one kind of sounds like it might be a scam or something like that, Probably not, but right, like, no, it's interesting to think about. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, because we've had this great conversation out of it. Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting.
So this is similar vein of thought here, but what does scare you about AI, Cody? Kind of on a, not downer, but maybe like the flip side of AI. Like what does scare you?
That's a good question. I think two things. One, I think, and I feel like a lot of people probably say this, but the potential for disinformation, right? People not knowing what is real, and even how that can be used in arguments for things that are real, and other people being, no, you can't trust that, right? So that's concerning. I do though have a lot of hope that like that will be less of a problem for my kids than it is for me, because like every generation like experiences technology differently. I feel like it'll be like how, maybe I can tell better than my grandpa whether something's a scam email. I imagine my kids will be like, Dad, that's obviously AI. That's obviously not. And we don't understand how you can't tell, So I have hope that they'll grow up in that and it'll just be natural to them to distinguish. Hopefully, could go the other way. The other thing, oh shoot, I had another thing the other thing that worries me is, as we're able to automate more work, which, I don't know who to believe on how soon we'll, massively disrupt the workforce with AI. But I will say that it's believable for the first time, right? Whether it happens and when it happens, I don't know. But I can buy it. So much of our personal identities, so much of the way we measure like human value and human worth, even for ourselves, is so tied up in like our careers or what we create and what we produce. And so if you disrupt that, what does that do to like our sense of human worth and human meaning, and like what existential crises will we have because of that? And maybe that leads to a good thing, because maybe our identity should not be so wrapped up in production or, so wrapped up in jobs at work. But I don't know. I can imagine more than just an economic crisis, like a real emotional crisis coming out of that.
Well, regardless of, how positive or negative the end result is, there's going to be a lot of pain on the way, simply because it's the exact same reason that humans will stay in crappy situations, just because it's what they know, it's what's comfortable, and anything that disrupts that routine feels like a threat, even if it's potentially a positive change. Yeah, and so Jake and I talk a lot, personally and on this podcast, about like how do we prepare people for the world coming forward. And for now, what we've decided is like, bring people like you on to talk about it.
Yeah,
people need to know, and we need to get the word out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think one, it'll just take time, but two, you mentioned like existential crises. Like, I think there will be a lot of that. I think of like the older generation. Let's say like my dad or whoever. I think so much of what people identify as was their job, right? Like everyone knew my dad did marketing and he was a strategist and XYZ, and that's what he was known for. That was him. And let's say you identify as a job that then is automated. You have to like confront this issue of like, I guess I'm not as important as I thought. What does it mean? It kind of brings up this question of like, what does it mean to be human? Like, who am I? What do I identify as? Am I my job? No. And I'm not that significant, obviously. It was automated. So like, I hope the end result is positive, because it causes this deep introspection of like, who am I and what do I mean to the world? And I hope people go positive with that. It could go either way, but
so I think that I have become, so I'm going to go off on a little bit of a soapbox here. So I am of the belief that like creation and artistry, for lack of a better term right now, is pretty foundational to what it means to be human. And I think that we're going to see the importance of that continue to rise, right? Because if you look back in history, right, like you have pretty much across the entire world, you can find examples of cave drawings, etc. Right? Like for whatever reason, humans, when we have excess energy and we have time to burn, like we like creating, models of the world around us through art, science, math, whatever, right? And I don't see that changing. It's possible that maybe AI just wireheads us all, and we're like, oh, sick. I get to just jack into my VR headset all day and look at AI generated burgers or whatever, right? But I think that, and I'm sure that there will be discomfort along the way, but I think that if we keep the focus on AI as creative tool and AI as a tool to free people to do creation, I think that that's the kind of the happy path that we should push for.
Yeah, totally agree. It's like if you focus, you can, like if you're trying to break an addiction, there's like two ways, right? You can sit there and say, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Don't think of an elephant, don't think of an elephant, don't think of an elephant. And you're like going to be thinking of it the whole time. Or you can say, okay, what do I want to do? Let's focus on that. And those things like naturally slough off, right? If you're like zeroed in on where you want to go. I think that's important with AI is like, where do we want to go? What do we want to use this for? And let's like zero in and focus on that because everything else will slough off the sides if we can do that. Sorry, Spencer, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No. I am out of questions now. I've been racking my brain for more.
I'm curious, Cody, just as we're wrapping up, you're this one-man corporation right now. So many people are trying to do this. They're trying to get where you're at. They're trying to get some customers. They're trying to build something that has value. What advice would you give to the people trying to build right now?
Sorry, pardon me. My advice would actually be build less and talk more. So I think one of the big mistakes, and it's funny because you hear everybody say this is a huge mistake, and I wouldn't have thought I'd repeat it, but I built so much early on that nobody needed because I thought I knew. I thought I knew what people needed. They need the same thing I need, or they need the same thing my first customer needed. Obvious. Go build it, and have just really over the last year made it a point of having as many conversations as I can, coffee chats, whatever. Like, I'm not going to try to sell you on anything. Just tell me about your life and your job and what you do. And apart from being incredibly fun, I learned so much about what I should actually be doing. And I think that is just ever more accelerated or more important when we can all be so much more productive. Like your ability to build something faster is so great right now, and the ability of the next guy to copy you fast is so great right now. The advantage of like, I'm gonna be more productive and do it first is slipping away. It's got to be, okay, now we can all do so much, so the pressure to do the right thing is greater than it's ever been. So, there's definitely a point where you just got to build and put things out there. Like, I'm not saying plan yourself to death. Don't let great be the enemy of good. But just talk to as many people as you can about what you want to build and why. That's the biggest thing I would do sooner if I started over.
Love that. Spoken like a true community expert. Very fitting. I love that. Well, Cody, is there anything we haven't asked or anything that you wanted to share that we haven't touched on?
Boy, I don't know. I've really enjoyed the whole conversation. I think we've covered a lot of good ground. So this has been a blast, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you guys. It's cool stuff.
Awesome.
I'd love to have you back on sometime.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
1 year from now, see where you're at. We're excited.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I'm excited to see where I'm at in a year too.
Yeah, it'll be an adventure. We'll talk soon. Yeah. Thanks, Cody.
All right. Take care, guys.